now going to move on to this panel discussion. And for this, I want to introduce on stage with Omar, Mr. Khalifa Al-Suwaidi, Nessa Raza Khan, Charles Monchot, and Faisal Ali, please. So, Mr. Khalifa Al-Suwaidi is the CEO and board member of Emirates Real Estate Solutions and was the former senior IT director at the Lands Department. Neza Reza Khan is the managing partner of FP Global, a boutique property developer specializing in citizen by investment projects. Charles Monchot is the managing director of the investment management arm of Al Mal Capital, and Faisal Al Ali is the head of IT at DR. Right. Now, questions. So think up of some questions as well, yeah? But I have a few myself, first of all. So I'd like to perhaps ask Khalifa, please, if you could, why do people need to pay attention to blockchain technology? We've heard it here, but why do they need to pay attention to this?
I think Omar have done a great job explaining what blockchain is. So I'm not going to go into any technicality. Well, when we look at blockchain from real estate sector, we look at three aspects. The first aspect is the title deed on blockchain. Imagine you have all title deed on blockchain. Any government or private sector that would like to utilize those data, they are available on a blockchain. They don't need to take the permission of land department or any other government entity because they can reach the digital original on such database. The second aspect we look at from real estate perspective is the smart contract. Now we're talking about Dubai brokers and we're talking about contracts between seller and buyer. Imagine if this contract is being conducted electronically, are verified, transparent, and the asset itself is moving from a seller to a buyer. And of course, the third aspect, which is the most important aspect, is the money. So I don't need to wait for the check to be cleared. The check or the amount of the transaction is going to move from the seller to from the buyer to the seller, and the fees supposed to be collected by brokers, it will move immediately in seconds. So this is how we look at blockchain from technology point of view and from real estate sector. It will add transparency to real estate market as well as it is secure technology.
Perfect. Quick question for Charles. Charles, will the blockchain technologies reduce costs? We think that would be the case, but would it also improve customer service in the real estate industry?
Yes, we are indeed very bullish on blockchain. We do believe that it's probably one of it is the most important technology evolution since the internet. And coming back to your question, there are basically four ways that blockchain can revolutionize the real estate industry. The first one is cutting the middleman. I think Omar mentioned it already very nicely. The second one is about transparency. Then there is also security dimension, and then is smart contracts. So if we look at cutting the middleman, coming back to the internet and the email, we all remember before the email, it was about writing a letter, stamping it, bringing it to the post office, and then it was very long, very costly, and we all know what's going on with the email. So similar type of consequences can be expected with the blockchain. Let me give you maybe a few applications. So if you think about it, by using the blockchain, we can basically put all of the details of one property on the blockchain. That means that you and I can go on the internet, check all of the history in terms of transaction, rents, and so on for a property. And obviously that then helps a lot to quicken the process and bring really the information to anyone. The second one, where it can improve the process and quicken it, is putting all of the information of the borrower on the blockchain. So that means that if I want to get a credit to buy a property, immediately all of my, let's say, personal information will be available to someone who wants to lend to me. And then a very important aspect is the digitalization of real estate. I'm coming from the liquid world, so my clients are buying bonds, they're buying stocks. And real estate, for the time being, is seen as a illiquid investment. With the digital token, as you mentioned, everything is going to change. So the fractional real estate is basically going to totally change the way we look at the industry. And I think Omar mentioned, let's say, asset exchanges instead of stock exchanges, and that's exactly what is going on, what is going to happen. So Omar was a bit, let's say, bearish for the future of brokers. I think, on the contrary, it's going to open a huge opportunities for the broker community, because they will be able to trade property much faster, much more efficiently, and really open to new markets. So I think that these are all, let's say, developments that initially are very scary, but actually they're very promising.
Yeah, it's all about change, isn't it, at the end of the day? Okay, I have a question for Neza. What real estate business processes do you think blockchain is likely to have the greatest impact in the coming months? And are there any areas which you see as crying out for such a new approach?
First of all, thank you, Mario. And regards to everybody here, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed said that we must innovate, and otherwise, if we don't innovate, you become irrelevant. So blockchain is already here. We talk about blockchain as if it's a new concept, and Dubai hasn't witnessed it yet. But developers such as Aston Developments, with a project in Dubai Science Park, crowdshare company called WeShare Property, founded by Sarah Bacon and Shane Caldwell. They're already doing fractional ownership, crowdfunding, all through blockchain. And this developer, Aston Developments, you can actually buy an apartment from them through Bitcoins. So blockchain is already here. We must embrace it, and we must figure out how we relate to blockchain and make sure that we have a job at the end of the day. Now, my mother used to send me faxes when I was studying in Texas in 1991 with a recipe so that I could cook something as a student. Now, today, if I see a fax number on somebody's business card, typically I don't deal with that company. Now, emails, people don't like emails anymore. It's about WhatsApp and BBM. So we have to make sure that we innovate and be relevant. Blockchain is only going to help us with our processes. Blockchain will ensure that some of the questions that you already posed to the previous panel, to Dubai Lands Department and RERA, will be met. Those of you who are unsatisfied with various processes and transactions in real estate, whether it's a rental market or a sales transaction, many of the challenges that we face today will be solved by blockchain. And I'll give you a quick example. The rental market, the rental transaction is much easier to talk about. So typically, a tenant is very, very wary about handing over checks and signing a tenancy contract before a landlord has already signed it. Right? If you think about it from a legal point of view, somebody who wanted to do some harm to you, they could have taken that checks and cashed it and without signing the tenancy contract. That's one. Second part is security deposit. Security deposit is always a serious problem. It's a challenge for brokers and property managers to reclaim that security deposit back from the landlord. Blockchain can solve that problem. Blockchain is not just about a technology that exists out in the internet, which has no real correlation with the real world. It is connected to the financial institution. That was the main purpose of blockchain, to maintain a ledger so that if there's a security deposit paid by the tenant to the landlord, it doesn't necessarily have to be cashed. It can be validated via blockchain into the financial system. There'll be three parties that sign off on it: the tenant, the landlord, and a third-party nominated person. It could be from the financial industry, it could be from RERA or any of the other parties who are neutral. So when it comes to the end of the tenancy contract, the tenant always wants 100% of the security deposit back, and landlord wants to keep as much as possible. So how do you mitigate? Well, all three parties need to sign off, and there has to be, the third party has to go out and snag it and make sure that the tenant's claims are justified, and so are the landlords. So this is just a simple way that blockchain can benefit, not make us irrelevant, but benefit the brokerage industry. Right. Another example, which is a lot more serious and has caused serious issues for most brokerage companies here. In the aftermath of the global financial crisis, 2009-10, we saw a lot of sublease scams that have come into the market. If blockchain were to come in and each property, whether it's for rent or for sale, was managed by blockchain, it's a verified ledger, Everybody has a copy. It's not something that you own and you keep. Everybody has a copy. It's a public shared database. So you can see exactly who the owner is. You can see who you're paying out your rent check to. So the question of sublease scam will not be a case anymore in Dubai real estate industry. So that will definitely help most of the brokerage companies who are operating professionally. On the sales transactions, we talked about the security deposit or the 10% guarantee check. It is a serious problem. Some of us don't want to admit it, but it's a serious problem because the buyers do not feel comfortable giving out a 10% security deposit check to the buyer's broker or the seller's broker. And we behave as an escrow just to hold that check. Now, what is to say that we won't give that check out to the seller? And the transaction doesn't go through, seller cashes the check, now you're left there with a civil case, which might take for years. Blockchain can solve that problem. Similar to how I talked about security deposit for a rental transaction, a security deposit, a guarantee check for a sales transaction can also be managed by a blockchain. Now, how does that all fit into how Lands Department operates and RERA operates? Lands Department already has a huge database of registered lands with title deeds that we were shown earlier in the presentation. But how many of us has actually seen, as a broker, how many of you have actually seen an original title deed before either a rental transaction takes place or a sales transaction? You are sent an email or maybe a photocopy. How do you know that photocopy or the email hasn't been tampered with? Blockchain cannot be tampered. That's the whole premise of blockchain. And I won't get into details because Omar has already explained it very thoroughly. So blockchain cannot be tampered. And it's not just one database that exists and that you tamper with it and your end-all, be-all. It exists across the board. So any player, and Omar has outlined all the players of the board, so starting with the Lands Department, then you have the trustees. After the trustees, you have all the circle of developers. It starts with the developers. And then you have the brokerage companies. If blockchain were to implement it across the board into every single field, every single industry, and every single professional part of the industry, then there will be no question of tampering with the data. There'll be no question of using Photoshop, changing the name on the title deed, and you take the check on your name as a broker and you run off. That's not going to happen. So the transparency will increase. Today morning, we saw a presentation from YouGov where they identified that 2017, investors, for some reason, have less trust on brokers and investors. And I find that very hard to believe, because knowing Lands Department and RERA and what they have done in the last 5 years especially, it has increased transparency. It has increased corporate due diligence. It has increased the trust factor and the credibility. Every single law that they've come up with, whether to regulate the brokerage market or the developer market, it has increased transparency for investors. And blockchain will add to that. It will not will not lose jobs because of blockchain. We must embrace it and learn more about it and see how we can integrate it with blockchain.
Thank you very much, Neza. That was very comprehensive. Thank you. I'd like to ask Faisal Ali, please. What challenges do you see the wider adoption of blockchain, be these regulatory or legal or technical, to do with privacy or perhaps relating to people's understanding of the technology and what it can do?
Well, I think what's going to be the most difficult part in blockchain is the adoption of the technology. More than the adoption, it's the consumption of the technology, right? At the end of the day, it's the consumer who needs to be willing to adopt to this technology and use this technology. How are we going to do that? I think from a slightly different perspective. While I agree with all the people over here, I think Omar's last point just hit it on the head, right? It's not a stock exchange, it's an asset exchange. Information is an asset. With the advent of smart homes, the smart technologies that are coming in today, right, the consumer data becomes more prevalent. There's more and more data being generated at a micro level, at a unit level, at an individual villa level. I love to talk to my friends in Diva because this is the simplest way I can put it into an example. Diva's meter is outside of your villa, right? Diva knows exactly how much electricity you consumed and they bill you for it very efficiently, how much water you use and they bill you very efficiently. What they don't know, how much of that electricity was spent on air conditioning, on lights, on television, on powering your routers, on powering your Wi-Fi, or other devices that are going to be in your home. With the smart technology that I've started generating, collecting all of this data today, my consumer behavior, my consumer spending of this electronic units is starting to become more and more detailed. Tomorrow with blockchain, this data can be validated and secured, and then it could be turned around and sold to different organizations. Now when you're talking about end users, consumers, having information as an asset, having that information in a tradable exchange, they would be more ready to adopt this technology because they see a monetary benefit within that technology. They see a definite tangible value of that technology. So I say to everybody that this is where the blockchain should go from a commodity perspective, from a user adoption perspective. Yes, it is absolutely required from a security perspective in large transactions, in the brokers community, in the developers community, but at the same time, I think we also need to look at how the users will adopt and will embrace this technology and the ways to push it over there.
Perfect, thank you. Omar, I'd like to turn to yourself. I mean, obviously you did a great representation there, but what can we expect from blockchain, say, in 2018?
Great question. Not much. No, but realistically, I think we're still at sort of this infancy of if you sort of go back and sort of look in sort of the 1980s and so on and say to someone, what can we expect of TCP/IP in 1981? Not much. But 20 years later, you can expect a lot. And I think the challenge is that right now, Gartner, the IT guys have this great curve, and we're sort of blockchain is right at the top of the hype curve essentially today. And I think essentially what's going to happen is that as sort of a lot of the noise cools down and hopefully some of that stuff will start happening in 2018. You start to see, blockchain as terminology start to go away, but the actual pieces that we need to use. So, for example, today you turn around to a consumer and say, hey, let's go do this blockchain thing. They're not going to understand any of that. If you give them an application that's been layered on top that actually uses that as an underlying function, that's what starts to make sense to them. And I think, hopefully 2018 onwards, we start to see more real-world applications start to come to market, essentially.
Okay, so for my second round of questions, because you guys are really technological and giving great answers, but I need you to be a little bit more succinct so I can ask each one of you one more question each. So back to Khalifa, please. If I could ask you, from concept to reality, what has the Dubai government done so far to prepare for the blockchain implementation?
We have been working very closely with the Dubai Smart Government in providing the right solution based on blockchain, a solution that can be helpful to all government departments as well as private sector such as banks and other entities. We're talking about solution that involves many procedures beyond buying or selling property. Let's be frank, if I buy a property, I would like to apply utility in it, I'd like to mortgage it, or I would like, for example, to open a showroom, a company. So they are all related with each other. When I want to open a company, I need to lease a place and then have a registered rental contract. So this is where we're trying to provide. We're trying to provide the solution that can integrate all government departments with each other so that you don't have to go across multiple departments to find your services. A solution not only for Dubai, but a solution that can go beyond Dubai, across countries. People can view listings, rental listings, sale listings, even outside of Dubai, integrating listing engines based on blockchain across countries. So we have been working very closely with Smart Dubai for the past year and a half. We have great results. I believe we will have something nice to announce by the end of quarter 4 this year.
Thank you. Charles, just a quick legal question for yourself. Can blockchain reinvent finance? What I mean by that is, what are smart contracts and how can they help avoid disputes, fraud, for example, and litigation, specifically involving real estate? Just in a...
The quick answer is yes, because it's a very long topic to develop. But let me elaborate a little bit on the other one. I think the key point here regarding the impact of blockchain for finance is the fact it's secure and decentralized. And that's something many people still underestimate. Let me give you one very recent example that happened over the weekend. So over the weekend, you had a US company called Equifax, which is the largest database for consumer credit information, got hacked. So that means that 150 million consumers got all of their credit information being hacked. And why it happens? Because it is centralized and it's not secure. So if you move to a system where it is decentralized, as shown by Omar with these nice charts, and secure, you change the whole spectrum. And this is the key thing regarding blockchain, is that it is indeed secure. So that changed a lot of things for finance. Then regarding smart contract, that's indeed a key feature of blockchain. If we think about it, we always use some smart contracts. If you think about vending machine, you come to the vending machine, you need to put a coins, you need to select, the bottles you want, and because you met some conditions, without any middleman, you get your bottle of water. And you can think about all of the applications on the finance that can happen. Let me maybe get out of the real estate industry, think about KYC documents. Every day in all banks of the world, for maybe the same consumer, there are lots of KYC documents that we need to go through. If it's secure on the blockchain with a digital ID, then the KYC is done for once and can be exploited. The last application about the insurance industry. Think when you pay your auto driver insurance premium. So with a smart contract, basically you can link your insurance contract with your SALIC. If you misbehave during the weekend and you have 4 violations, your premium for this auto insurance contract will rise, and then maybe go down if you start to behave better later. So these are the kind of very simple applications that can be developed, and it's a whole new world for the financial industry.
Perfect, thank you. Neza, just in 30 seconds, please. Do you think blockchain will eliminate the need for traditional estate agencies? How will they have to change, and should they be worried?
I think I already answered the question just earlier. You did. That I think was very vocal about that. Thanks to Omar's presentation earlier. No, I don't think that real estate brokers will be irrelevant at all. In fact, we just need to make sure that we understand what blockchain is. We understand how it's going to help us. As a quick example, blockchain, everybody thinks about blockchain as a platform for Bitcoins, but it's not. It's a technology that we can use, and we can horizontally extrapolate that across any industry, especially real estate. We're looking at registering any asset, whether it's an apartment or a villa or a land registry. Now, when you try to upload a rental property or a sales property into Business Property Finder or what have you, they typically, as a broker, they typically ask you for the title deed number. Now, that title deed number, the portals today, they don't have the ability to actually cross-check with Lands Department database to validate that indeed there is such a title deed number. But blockchain can easily solve that problem. And what that means is the broker, the buyer's broker, seller's broker, don't spend a lot of time and money and to realize that the person who claimed to be the owner of the property is not, and the sales transaction doesn't happen. It happened to me many times, especially investment sales. So blockchain is here to stay. We just need to understand how we're going to fit into that picture. Another example is if a couple is viewing a villa, and I know that most brokers don't like to go to the viewing, they just send the tenants out to the viewings. You can make an extra effort, or you can have a system in your office where the tenants can actually log in with a 360 Google 3D view with an iPhone. You don't even need a Google Glass anymore. With an iPhone, you can see the entire villa any way you like it, and you can visit every room and every view from every room and every balcony. And after that, you connect back online with the agent, and using the smart contracts that everybody's talked about, we can close a tenancy contract deal online with the security deposit paid online via a cryptocurrency or conventional banking, but managed by Bitcoin. And that's where the security is. That's where the transparency is. I know that blockchain means that you cut out the middleman, and I think, first of all, we're very far from that. And second of all, I think that brokerage companies in Dubai, they're very innovative, and they'll come up with ways to become more relevant to blockchain.
Okay. And my last question, Faisal, please, if you could just in a few moments, why should other GCC countries follow the UAE in the blockchain implementation?
Well, in the end, blockchain is going to make everything more efficient, more streamlined, and more secure. I think that's an end game that everybody wishes to achieve, so there's no reason why people should not be following this. We're lucky enough to be the leaders in the region to move into this space, we move into this technology, and it's quite simple. It's a natural evolution of this process. I would like to, however, say one more thing to what you were suggesting on the 360-degree view very quickly. I would like to invite everybody to come to our stand tomorrow onwards and take a 360-degree virtual view, virtual walkthrough of one of our apartments.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, we're run out of time. We've got loads more questions, but we've run out of time. So please give a warm round of applause to our guests this afternoon. Thank you.